Good day, class. Today we will begin exploring our art component entitled Modern Art. From Impressionism, Expressionism, going to the performance art to happenings and mob. When we hear the word modern, what comes to your mind? Maybe you're thinking of something new, advanced, or even unusual. And you're right. Modern art is very different from traditional art forms that came before it. In the past, art often showed realistic pictures of people, nature, or religion. But in the modern period, artists began to ask, what if art didn't always have to look real? What if it could express feelings, ideas, or even dreams? That's why in modern art, you will see bold colors, strange shapes, and artworks that may not look realistic but carry deep meaning. It is an art movement that reflects the changes in society, technology, and the way people think in the 20th century. So let's discover how art transformed from traditional art to modern art. Let's begin. Take a look at this picture. What do you see? Yes, they are cats, but not just an ordinary cats. Each cat is drawn in a different style. This picture is actually a simple way of showing us the different styles in modern art. This cat looks like it painted with light strokes and colors. This represents Impressionism. This one looks more emotional and exaggerated. This is from Expressionism. This cat is broken into shapes, like puzzle. That's Cubism. Here's a cat with an apple on his head, looking dreamlike. That's Surrealism. This one looks like it came from the comic book. That is pop art. And this one looks playful with shapes and colors. That's abstract. See how simple subject a cat can be shown in many different ways. That's the beauty of modern art. Artists of this period broke away from traditional and started experimenting with colors, shapes, and ideas. Modern art. It is characterized by the contemporary styles of visual art produced from the 1860s to 1970s. During this period, artists experimented with other materials to produce art as well as tried to find fresh ideas to interpret art. What do you know about modern art? Let's try to look at these different pictures that examples the different styles from each modern art movements. The beginning of the 20th century is recognized as the period of revolution and change, wherein artists were seen representing the world they know in a unique ways or never before seen by the public. They also introduced the variety of new art styles that not only broke artistic traditions of the past but also pointed the way going to the future innovations. It also includes all the movements, theories, and attitudes developed by the painters like Vincent van Gogh, Paul Cézanne, Claude Monet, and others. Europe was the birthplace of these new styles. These styles that greatly influenced the art created later in America. However, this changed as the century wore on. The American art began to show a bold new character of its own. Ultimately, the artworks created by the America became the model to the artists in Europe, and other parts of the world turned for inspirations. Style. Style shared by particular group like-minded artists. A familiarity with these styles can help us situate art and artists that are new to us, which often help us to understand the new styles in this era. When we say styles, it surrounded us in our daily lives. We can easily identify the specifics from the cars, from the stores, from the brand names, any type of goods. That's why in art, people note personal styles and those specific artists. In the second half of the 19th century, emerged the Impressionist movement. Impressionist artists moved away from established practices and discovered new ways. They used mixed colors side by side, using shortened, broken strokes, for more visual effect on the subject. Impressionist art is a style in which the artist captures the image of an object as someone would see if they could just caught a glimpse of it. They paint the pictures with a lot of color, and most of their pictures are more on outdoor scenes. Their pictures are very vibrant and bright. They started on something new like capturing scenes like household objects, seascapes, house, or even the ordinary people, as long as it is from the outdoor scenes. All of these are characterized by the works of Claude Monet, Auguste Renoir, and Edouard Manet. Characteristics of the Impressionism are color and light, everyday subjects, painting outdoors, and open compositions. Pag sinabi natin color and light, these refers to the short broken strokes that were used in the paintings of Impressionism, including the unmixed colors side by side and freely brushed strokes that conveys visual effect. Just like in the two pictures in your screen from the Sunrise of Impressionism by Claude Monet and the Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh. You can observe how they paint their own masterpieces through a simple or with the broken strokes of the different colors. But you can still observe that their subjects are commonly from the outdoor scenes. Everyday subjects, as it's mentioned in Impressionism, are more on outdoor scenes. It could be a scenes of life, household objects, landscapes and seascapes, and even the houses, cafes, or other buildings. Painting outdoors. Previously, still life, portraits, and landscape were painted inside the studio. But in Impressionism, they most fun in natural light. They do prefer the ever-changing effect of light in the outdoor scenes. That's why in Impressionism, most of their subjects are outdoor scenes. And the fourth one is the open composition, wherein Impressionist painting also move away from the formal structure approach to placing the position on of their subjects. Now as we dig to Impressionist era, who are the well-known Impressionists? By the 1870s, the stage was set for the emergence of the next major art movement in Europe, which is the Impressionism. It started with a group of French painters that included Edouard Manet, Claude Monet, Auguste Renoir, and eventually spread to the other countries such as Italy, Germany, and the Netherlands. The first Impressionist painter is Claude Monet. Claude Monet was the founder and most productive practitioner of the French Impressionist movement. He believed that art should express the fleeting moments and quality of nature, where he painted landscapes, seascapes, and cityscapes at different times of the day and year, showing the impermanence of the natural environment. Eventually, Claude Monet died in December 5, 1926 due to lung cancer. Claude Monet was the true pioneer of the Impressionists. He was constantly exploring what do I see and how do I record it through painting. Monet had a long-lasting fascination in observing and painting light and nature, wherein many of his beautiful painting light and nature places or in a garden he created for himself and for his wife. The second pioneer is Pierre-Auguste Renoir. He is along with Claude Monet, and he was also the central figures of Impressionist movement. His early works are snapshots of real-life situations, full sparkling color and light. By the mid-1880s, however, Renoir broke away from his Impressionist movement to apply a more disciplined formal technique to portraits of actual people and figure painting. The third pioneer is Edouard Manet. He is one of the first 19th century artists to depict modern life subjects. He was a key figure in transition from realism to Impressionism, with a number of his works considered as making the birth of modern art. In every era we're going to explore, there's always be a counterpart artist coming from the Philippines. For Impressionism, we have Juan Luna and Maestro Fernando Amorsolo. I know you are all familiar with these two pioneers. Juan Luna, in the portrait of his son, the 3-year-old Andres, the use of small and brightly colored dabs on the cheek The intent to create a quick impressionism of a fleeting moment and the appearance of painting outdoors and reflected light were just some qualities that were clearly impressionistic style. So, ibig sabihin, there are some paintings of Juan Luna are being adapted from the impressionist style. Maestro Fernando Amorsolo, the first Filipino national artist of the Philippines, that is known for paintings having a distinctive glow against which figures stand out, trying to catch the exact quality of light, the sunlight, and the high noon. When contrasts are strongest and the sun shafts create dappled light patterns on the ground that recalls the style of Impressionists. Just like Claude Monet, Fernando Omorsolo adopted the idea of the transition of the color and light through the nature transition, or the changes of the brightness through the sunlight and the high. So here are some paintings under Impressionist: this Polarium of Juan Luna and Dalagang Bukid by Fernando Omorsolo together with the Las Lavenderas. If you observe the paintings of Fernando Omorsolo, we've been touched by the Impressionist technique. Let's move on to the second development art movement, which is the Expressionism. Expressionism defines quite similar to the music Expressionism. What is Expressionism in art? It is characterized as deeply personal style in art, wherein expressionist artists communicates personal feelings about the subject rather than just painting what he or she sees. Expressionist artists ignore the contemporary rules of art, where they had the strength to experiment with too exaggerated and in other ways to change the proportion of the figures and objects. They use brilliant and clashing colors and sharp twisted shapes, and the early Expressionism was considered as part of the Post-Impressionism. The Expressionism movement, assessing an artworks of the artist, was now based on the artist's feelings rather than the analysis of the composition. The artists of this movement utilize swaying of brush strokes to show the personal reactions of the anxieties, emotion, sadness of the modern world or the particular situation. The characteristics of Expressionism is thick applications of paint, or that's called impasto, giving texture, evoking an intense and violent mood of the work. The colors used as bold, often strong and unnatural. The brush strokes are loose and freely applied. There are two famous expressionist artists. We have Wassily Kandinsky and Edvard Munch. Edvard Munch is the most famous expressionist artist. Who is the famous proponents of expressionism? We have Edvard Munch. He was a Norwegian painter and printmaker, wherein Edvard Munch's life is full of tragedy and death. We'll know why. These experiences were later expressed through his art. His well-known artworks use images to evoke feelings from anxiety, isolation, rejection, and even death. One of Edvard Munch's famous artwork is the Scream, wherein I first encountered that painting from the cartoon series from the Cartoon Network. This artwork exemplifies the characteristics of expressionism, wherein the painting offers a insight to the artist's inner anxiety, which he called soul painting. Munch used bright spinning colors to express his chaotic emotional state during the time he painted the artwork. Because Edvard Munch was best known for forerunner of expressionism, wherein early life was full of tortured by sickness, death, insanity, even unhappy love affairs, and guilty. Wherein in a classic way, to understand his painting, we observe the way he worked through his state of mind through his painting. We also observe the Munch's ability to portray the intimate emotion in a universal way, how people will be familiar with those paintings and make them more meaningful and beautiful. How about Wassily Kandinsky? Wassily Kandinsky started out as a realistic painter but was among the first to make truly abstract art in which color and form take on an expressive life. where he believed that two shapes, line, and color have also emotional properties that are capable of conveying heightened feelings. For example, the color red, it impressed the strong drumbeat or strong emotion. In green, the shrill sound of violin. Okay? Or even in yellow, the capacity of attain heights. Pag horizontal is nakahiga. So, cold, flat. Okay? In vertical, nakatayo, firm, strong, warm. And the curve and angular lines, those are the mature and youthful. Okay? Just like from the movie Inside Out. Okay? Wherein they use the color for the emotions of the personal or the person itself. Okay? It portrays the emotion, the sadness, the disgust, the joy, the anger. Okay? That's how Wassily Kandinsky used those elements from the Expressionist era. Now, who influenced the idea of Expressionism in the Philippines? We have a Victorio Edades, who is a national artist for painting. It was the Filipino public's introduction to modern art, wherein Victorio Edades worked the builders or the artists of the model as it portrays the story of the Filipino itself. He used the exaggerated features by using the dark tones and heavy brush strokes to express the intense feelings set to the expressionist artwork. Wherein pag sinabi kasi nating dark, yung mga dark tones, ibig sabihin there are in darkness, okay? May pinagdadaanan, may negative situation. Okay? May lungkot, okay? May struggle. Ganun ang way ni Victor Edades ginawa yung the builders and the artists of the model na painting niya. Kaya siya ay nagfo-fall and he adopts the idea of Expressionism. Can you see the jagged lines and shapes in the picture? Can you also notice how the artists overlap the flat shapes or in abstract design? That's called Cubism, the third art movement of the modern art. Cubism, this is a style of painting developed by Spanish artist Pablo Picasso and French artist Georges Braque in Paris in 1907. It was inspired by geometric style and composition of Paul Cézanne. It was a groundbreaking artwork that used flat planes and abandoned linear perspective and of round forms. In 1912 to 1913, Pablo Picasso and Braque created a technique of their composition. There are two types of cubism. We have the analytic and synthetic. Pag sinabi nating analytic, it is a small facets of the dissected or analyzed objects that are assembled into show a same object. Okay? Ibig sabihin na pag pinagdikit natin ng isang or variety of objects or cutouts, it will form into a one image. That's called analytic cubism. While the synthetic cubism, these are the large pieces of neutral or colored paper suggested a particular object, wherein synthetic cubism use bright colors, collage, and paper cutouts in the artwork. For example, it's like a photo collage. Okay, you are given a theme and then put all the variety of images or a collage or cutouts into a one artwork. That's called cubism. Cubism, it is a style broke the traditional ideas of what art is. It made people to rethink what art was. Okay? So these are the two cubist artists and painters who rejected the previous concepts that art should copy nature or adopt the traditional techniques or perspective, modeling and foreshortening the idea, or they wanted to emphasize the two-dimensionality of the canvas by reducing objects into form a geometry idea. How did Cubism influence Filipino artists? And who are these famous Filipino Cubism artists? The distinctive themes and styles that made use of geometric fragmentation technique in the work of early Filipino Cubists contributed significantly to the introduction of the modern art in the Philippines. We have three famous Filipino cubists. We have Vicente Monansala, Cesar Legazpi, and Zenon Rivera. These cubist artists like Vicente Monansala and Cesar Legazpi are unlike of the European cubist master because both stay close to the figures and simplified basic geometric forms from one form to another. For one, Manansala hardly tore the images into pieces like many jigsaw fragments the way Picasso and Braque did in their works. He has his own easy-to-understand cubism, which is the transparent cubism which he claims he developed all by himself. But among of the three, the more I admire is the idea of Zenon Rivera. If you are familiar with the windows or yung mga glass, okay, yung mga glass dun sa may simbahan natin sa cathedral, it portrays the idea of Zenon Rivera, sorry. Zenon Rivera is similar to the artwork of Zenon Rivera is similar to the ones we have in our own church, in the cathedral. Yung mga figures na naka-glass doon sa window, doon sa may church natin. Those are the idea coming from Zenon Rivera. The next art movement is Dadaism. Dadaism or Dada was an anti-art movement that started in 1916 in Zurich, Switzerland. It was a reaction to the First World War and rebellion against the ruling establishment. When we say Dadaism, it characterized by a dream fantasies, memory images, and visual tricks and fantasies. According to a Dadaist artist, the beauty of art is in the mind, not in the eyes of the beholder, coming from the Marcel Duchamp ready-made and photomontage. The movement got its name from a nonsense word, wherein Dadaism is a style characterized more on imagination, or these are the remembered images or visual tricks. Who is Dada movement famous inventor? We have Marcel Duchamp, who is one of the famous Dada artists and was a French-American artist who coined the word ready-mades, and he generally known as the father of conceptual art, wherein one of the example of his conceptual art is the Fountain of 1917, where it is an industrial porcelain urinal set sideways and signed Armut Duchamp pseudonym. Okay? And there are two types of Dadaism. We have the ready-mades and photomontage, which was been coined by Marcel Duchamp as well. What is ready-made? Ready-mades were the art made from found objects but used differently from their normal context. Ito yung mga ginamit na object ni Marcel Duchamp sa ibang paraan. Okay? Pinagdikit niya ang isang object into one object and combine it, but without the purpose itself na kung paano siya gamitin is ganun din yung labas dun sa mismong artwork. No. Okay? Binigyan niya ng ibang way, ibang idea, or ibang context kung paano niya ginamit yung mismong object. Well, the photomontage is quite similar to the cubism, wherein we talk about the collage. So the photomontage, it was a technique similar to that is the collage of the cubist. Pinagpatong, pinagsama, all the variety images that coming from the different cutouts from the books, from the magazine, or pictures or images. So that is the Dadaism. The Dada movement ended in 1920s when many of its members felt that the movement have lost its relevance. So hindi daw tumagal dahil hindi naman siya ganun ka-importante or hindi siya nagkaroon ng importansya during that period. So after Dadaism, many Dada artists led to a new movement, and that is called the Surrealism. So what is Surrealism? Surrealism, it was an art movement that started in 1924 by a writer, poet, and Dadaism artist, Henri Breton. It is a 20th century style in art that sought to channel the unconscious as a means to unlock the power of imagination. Depicts an illogical subconscious dream world beyond the logical conscious or the physical one, wherein the surrealism looked for the inner world of the mind. One of the most popular surrealist artists was Salvador Dali, who was one of the famous Spanish Catalan surrealist painter during the 20th century and as an icon of the surrealist movement. It attempts to express the workings of the subconscious through a fantastic imagery. So this movement allow artists to rely on based on their own recurring motifs or dreams or their unconscious mind. It is a style that it depicts an illogical subconscious dream world wherein it is a clear expression of departure from the reality. So many surrealist works appeared morbidly or in a gloomy subjects as just like a Salvador Dali. Salvador Dali was known for the striking and bizarre images in his paintings, where he used extensive symbolism in his work, just like in the painting of the persistence of memory. Okay, where he uses this in the persistence of memory, Dali explores the relationship between the past, the present, and the future, wherein the time is relative and can be said that the different meaning to different people depending on the individual's journey. Okay, where in this painting, it reflects the varying perspective of time and memory. Okay, so what are the other characteristics of surrealism and who are these main formulators aside from Salvador Dali? We have Giorgio Chirico, Joan Miro, and René Magritte. Giorgio de Chirico is a Greek-Italian artist created the mysterious nightmarish landscape. Okay, just like the mystery and melancholy of Street in 1914. Joan Miro created the painting of the Garden of 1925, wherein he is the Spanish painter depicting the strange imaginary creatures in his painting. He uses different lines, different shapes, and different colors wherein it portrays could be a animal or a person through a different type of way of creating that subject. Okay? And the third one is René Magritte, a Belgian painter of familiar object that turns up together in unusual setting, just like the painting of René Magritte, The Son of Man of 1946. There are other techniques have been invented under the Surrealist movement. Number one, we have frottage. Frottage is a technique wherein a piece of paper would be placed on the top of a textured surface. If you're familiar or nagawa nyo na when you were in elementary, yung piece of paper or plain white paper, yung nirarub natin sa mga different surface, even dun sa piso, yung coin, di ba nirarub natin, ginawa natin yun sa math subject natin. By through rubbing the texture of each coin from peso, 5 peso, 10 peso, nirarub natin, nilalagay natin sa papel. That's called frottage. You are using the different texture of the objects that you can found to form a one particular subject. For example, you use the different texture of a wood to create the image of mountains. That's called frottage by rubbing the surface or the texture itself. Number two is decalcomania. Decalcomania is a technique wherein paint is splashes or put on the paper while the paint is still wet, and another piece of paper will be rubbed or giving a forest-like pattern. Okay. I will input or additional videos in the G drive so that you can watch the type of these surrealist techniques so that you have the idea what or how these techniques have been performed or do in the particular artwork. Third one is the grattage. Grattage, it use a painted canvas placed on the top of a textured surface. The paint will then be scraped away, creating an impression. For example, in a piece of paper, there are been input a different colors or variety of colors, and those colors have been coated into a acrylic black color. Once that acrylic black is dry, they use the toothpick or stick to create or to draw a image or object that you want to draw on that particular paper. Okay, don't worry, I will provide all the images or these techniques in the G drive. The grattage. I mean the fumage. Fumage uses placing a piece of paper over a lighted candle, creating a smoke. Moving the paper around will result in pattern from the soot. And the fifth one is the automatic drawing, wherein it uses a writing instrument and just let it move it around with a medium without conscious thought. And the last one is the drip painting. It utilizes paint drips from a moving can or paint. The two pioneers or counterpart under the modern art Philippines of surrealism is we have Galo Ocampo and Hernando Ocampo. These surrealist artists have been since able to attract a number of adherents and give the artistic direction to what Filipino modernists were looking. And these two are the two proponents under the surrealist style in the Philippines. They offered a personal solution to life during the years following the trauma of the World War I. Abstract Expressionism. It was a movement in 1940s that developed in New York, USA. It is a combination of abstractionism and expressionism. This art style is where paint is dribbled, spilled, or splashed onto a huge canvases to express painting as an action, and it's also known as the New York School art. The distinct style of abstract expressionism is the action painting by Jackson Pollock. Action painting, it is an energetic style in which the painting splash, drip, or spilled into the canvas, and this style is spontaneous and impulsive. Wherein one of the most well-known abstract expressionist painter is Jackson Pollock. JP is nicknamed as Jack the Dripper because of his trademark style of dripping and splattering the paint into the canvas or into the floor with the different colors or just a medium type of colors. Aside from Jackson Pollock, we also have Willem de Kooning. Willem de Kooning is a Dutch-born painter and decorator who went to New York and became one of the most consistent, longest-lived abstract expressionists. He developed a style where he employed fierce and slashing brushstrokes. As you can see in the picture in the side of the image is the face of a man or a person through some brushstrokes or slashing brushstrokes of Willem de Kooning from his painting. And Franz Kleen, a leading expressionist, painted in the manner that typical of his time, wherein gestural, personal, spontaneous, and full of emotion, wherein Kleen started to build up texture using the broad brushes to apply the paint thickly, then that is called impasto. We have two famous counterpart artists under the abstract expressionism, and they are Jose Hoya and Lee Aguinaldo. We also have optical art as part of the art movements of modern art. It uses abstract patterns with a stark contrast of foreground and background. It oftenly used by black and white colors to create maximum contrast. They give the viewer the impression of movement, hidden images, flashing and vibrating patterns, or swelling or warping. Okay? It is an example of kinetic art that as an art form that fools the eye into thinking that the art is moving. If you're familiar with some images na nakikita natin sa sa Facebook natin or sa mga sockmeds natin, na pag tinitigan natin ay merong behind images dun sa mismong picture. Like for example, pag tumingin tayo dun sa isang red dot, 'di ba? Pag tinitigan natin red dot, behind it meron palang image, an invisible image. Or meron tayong isang tinitignan na images na pag tinitigan natin, nagmo-move pala siya. Okay? Even though do sa actual picture ay hindi naman. Those are the optical art. It fools the eye into thinking that the artwork is moving. Op art was a type of abstract art made of geometric shapes, wherein the earliest op art were black and white, then later it was been developed to use some vibrant colors. So even the optical art also developed time to time, from black and white to use of vibrant colors. 'Di ba? Meron tayong mga nilalaro, 'di ba, na pag ginagalaw natin, iba ang image ng two sides. Okay? That's also part of optical art, wherein it also apply na nagkaroon na ng kulay yung mismong object or yung mismong artwork. So in the 1950s, the man's preoccupation and fascination with the nature of perception and optical effects and illusion combines with the new technology and psychology. And this gave them the rise of the modern art forms to optical art and pop art. So the characteristics of optical art is number one, op art exists to fool the eye. Optical compositions create a sort of visual tension in the viewer's mind that gives works to the illusion to move or the movement of the illusion. Second one is the elements, the colors, lines, and even shapes. These are commonly chosen to achieve the maximum effect in an optical art. In an op art, the aim is to draw the viewer into the work in more or less systematic ways. And number three is the perspective and careful juxtaposition of colors, like the black and white. So, the pioneer of optical art is Bridget Riley. So, until present, siya ang pioneer ng optical art, where this British artist is known for her artwork that produced dizziness to the viewers, causing them to look away. So aside from Bridget Riley, we also have Victor Vasarely, Yakov Agam, and MC Escher. Okay? So they are the founders, or they are the proponents of the optical art. We proceed now to pop art. Pop art was a movement that began in the mid-1950s in the United Kingdom and 1950s as well in United States. Its name was coined by British curator Lawrence Alloway. It is expressed by daring simple and everyday images from contemporary culture. Common images used in pop art came from the advertisement like packaging, comic strips, movie stars, and even celebrity posters and etc. Who are the well-known pop artists? We have Andy Warhol and Roy Lichtenstein. Andy Warhol was a prominent figure of pop art wherein his background as a commercial artist and illustrator explains why his works appear the way they do. Okay? Most of the Andy Warhol pop art or illustrator is commonly from the packaging of the food or even the comic strips or the posters of a movie stars. While Roy Lichtenstein turned his attention to the comic book as another mainstay in American culture. He was remarkably faithful to the original comic strips images that he painted under the pop art. So si Roy Lichtenstein, he focused on the making of comic book strips to stories from the movie to comic book stories, okay, by drawing all the scenes, all the scripts, all the lines in a comic strips. So they are the two well-known pop artists or the pop art artists. We have Andy Warhol and Roy Lichtenstein. The next one is performance art. It is a genre of art that often takes place live and in private by a single artist and sometimes involve audience participation or other performance. Sometimes carefully planned and scripted but can also be spontaneous and random. During the 1960s to 1970s, performance art became a phenomenon seen as a branch of conceptual art, wherein performance art was focused on the artist's own body or preferred as body art, wherein there's no any art material or painting itself. Instead, the person or the body itself of the person is used as an art. So the body art used as a performance art in the performance art as it requires to use their own bodies in front of the audience. It can happen in the theater, gallery, or even in the street. There are no sight boundaries pag sinabi nating performance art. It's like the idea of installation, okay? Wherein pag sinabi natin installation, it is a space that is presented as a work of art that can be entered, explored, experienced, and reflect upon. Okay? Just like the the How to Explain Picture to a Dead Hair by Joseph Beuys and Marina Abramovic at the Museum of Modern Art. They use their own body as the art itself, wherein the audience or the people as the audience itself explore, experience, or they entered in that area to know the message or the things that can happen in that particular installation. Okay, so these performance pieces were recordedly through a photography, or it could be in a film or video, and eventually became the primary means by which performance reached in a wider audience. So hindi lang siya for the famous or for the one who are interested, but to a crowd or big number of audiences. The second to the last one is flash mob, wherein it's also part of performance art. It refers to a group of people who organize on the internet and then quickly assemble in a public place and do something bizarre and disperse. It could also use for political protests, commercials, and even to promotion or just for fun. Especially in our generation, they use flash mob for proposals, and even for some occasions or surprises. Mob is a form of spectacle that grew out as an extension of performance art, and it became popular because of its electric combination of art and showmanship that sometimes in equal parts sketch and comedy. Okay? Do not be surprised if you're in a group of people who assemble and perform a brief time and then quickly disperse, often for a purpose of entertainment, or any artistic expression, because art mob artists takes their art into a streets, to a parks, to a mall, or even a gallery, and those are the main preference of their how will they communicate directly to the public or to the people from the confines of the formal world and need to be in the center of life. So the flash mob should also takes place in a short amount of time, where some can be as short as 1 or 2 minutes and generally fewer than 10 minutes ang ginagawa for flash mobs. Hindi siya tulad ng mga concert na it will take an hour para i-perform in public. But pag sabi kasi nating flash mob, it just will take within maybe less than 10 minutes lang, or 3 should I say. Okay? So that is flash mob. And the last one is the happenings. There was no definite or consistent style for happenings because it greatly varied in size and intricacy, but all the artists involved operated with the fundamental brief that art could be brought into a realm of everyday life, or it is a reaction against the technical aesthetic of abstract expressionism that based on the performance art. So, pag sinabi kasi nating happenings, it is a branch of performance art movement that grew out into a social changes occurring during the year of 1950s to 1960s that is required active viewer or audience participation. And they are just some few well-known happening artists. We have Alan Capro, George Brecht, and Robert Watts. So, that is the last part of the modern art. So, I hope you understand. You can go back to some slides or to some part of the video if you want to understand more of the lesson of these modern arts. Okay? So this will be the end of our modern art phenomenon, from impressionists to the happenings to